Path Radio, your #1 online Islamic talk station.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Kamal Hussein and you're listening to Middle Path Radio. And welcome to Straight Talk, the show that lets you debate and discuss controversial issues revolving around current affairs and news. So stay tuned and participate with our panels of experts. Please join in and contribute. You can make comments or ask questions. Unfortunately tonight, our phone lines are down, but you can text us at 074-77080248, or you can tweet us at Middle Path Radio. Or if you want, you can use the WhatsApp message, which is again, the number is 074-77080248. So inshallah, tonight we want to discuss David Cameron's counter-terrorism strategy, which he presented in his keynote speech in Manchester at his Conservative Party conference. Amongst other issues in particular, he addressed the Muslim community and the problem of radicalization. Now, David Cameron and Theresa May are working on how to implement this strategy. So many in the Muslim community have been outraged by this notion. And this is what we want to explore tonight, inshallah. To discuss this burning issue, we are honored to have with us Brother Quddus Ali, who is our local solicitor, and Brother Abdul Samad, our businessman and a political activist. So before we start, let's listen to an extract from the speech from David Cameron.
Tackling the causes of poverty, fighting for real opportunity. And there's one more big social reform in our mission to rebuild Britain as an even greater country. We need to confront, and I mean really confront, extremism. When I read what some young people born and brought up in this country are doing, it makes me sick to my stomach. Girls not much older than my eldest daughter, swapping loving family homes and straight-A futures for a life of servitude under ISIL in a land of violence and oppression. Boys who could do anything they want to in Britain, who've benefited from all this country stands for, instead ending up in the desert wielding a knife. This ideology, this diseased view of the world, it's become an epidemic, infecting minds from the mosques of Mogadishu to the bedrooms of Birmingham. And here's what we need to do. 1, tear up the narrative that says Muslims are persecuted and the West deserves what it gets. Never mind that it's Britain and America behind the biggest effort to help the victims of Syria. Who is ISIL murdering more than anyone else? Muslims. No one should get away with this politics of grievance anymore. Two, take on extremism in all its forms, the violent and non-violent. People don't become terrorists from a standing start. It begins with a preacher telling them that Christians and Muslims, well, they can't live together. It moves to people, perhaps in their community, saying the security services were responsible for 7/7. And it progresses, yes, it progresses to a website telling them how to wage jihad, fight in Syria, defeat the West. And before you know it, a young British boy, barely 17, is strapping bombs to his body and blowing himself up in Iraq. We've got to stop this at the start, stop this seed of hatred even being planted in people's minds, let alone allowing it to grow. 3, we need to tackle segregation. There are parts of Britain today where you can get by without ever speaking English or meeting someone from another culture. Zoom right in, and you'll see some institutions that actually help incubate these divisions. Do you know that in our country there are some children who spend several hours each day at a madrasa? Now let me be clear, there's nothing wrong with children learning about their faith, whether it's at a madrasa or a Sunday school or a Jewish yeshiva. But in some madrasas, we've got children being taught that they shouldn't mix with people of other religions, being beaten, swallowing conspiracy theories about Jewish people, These children should be having their minds opened and their horizons broadened, not having their heads filled with poison and their hearts filled with hate. So I can announce this today. If an institution is teaching children intensively, then whatever its religion, we will, like any other school, make it register so it can be inspected. And be in no doubt, if you are teaching intolerance, we will shut you down. And this goes to a wider truth. For too long, we've been so frightened of causing offense that we haven't looked hard enough at what is going on in our communities. This is passive tolerance, and I'll tell you where it leads. It leads to children, British children, going to Pakistan in the summer holidays before they've even started their GCSEs and being forced to marry a man they've never met. It leads to children, British children, having their genitals mutilated, not just a clinic in Lagos, but in the back streets of Britain. This passive tolerance, it's turned us into a less integrated country. It's put our children in danger. It is unforgivable. So let me say right here, no more passive tolerance in Britain. We've passed the laws, and now I want them enforced. People who organized forced marriages, I want them prosecuted. Parents who take their children for FGM, I want them arrested. And as we do that, we shouldn't just be saying what's wrong with these practices. We should be saying what's right with Britain. Freedom, democracy, equality. These are precious. People fought for them. Many died for them. In the trenches a century ago, on the beaches 30 years later, in the suffragettes, in gay pride. Do you know what? Half the world is crying out for these freedoms. They see what we've achieved with them. Free speech and the best literature in the world. Freedom of religion and many religions, faiths living side by side peacefully. Free thinking and the endless advances in medicine and technology that has brought. A free economy and our standard of living our grandparents could only have dreamt of. I want my children, I want all our children to know they're part of something big, the proudest multiracial democracy on earth. That's why we're making sure they learn that.
Interesting discussion or presentation. Can I ask, as a lawyer, Brother Kudus, as a lawyer, you engage with the Muslim community and non-Muslim community. What is the reaction on Mr. Cameron's speech on extremism?
Thank you very much for having me on this show.
You're welcome.
Yeah, basically, before I answer your question, if I may, I just want to give you some background information.
Please do.
So that listeners can actually appreciate what this new counter-extremism strategy is all about. So very quickly, the new counter-extremism strategy is all about radical preachers, clamping down Muslims.
Okay.
They will be banned from posting materials online. Schools will be protected from entryism by extremism. Police and local authorities will have greater powers to close down premises used to support extremism. Furthermore, masjids and madrasas will be closely monitored to ensure that they don't promote any type of hate preaching. And that has caused a lot of concern and worry amongst the Muslim community. They feel alienated. They feel that they've been stigmatized and targeted. And there's Muslim lawyers, thinkers across the board who are saying things like this has not only caused concern for the Muslim community, it has gripped the community, it has alienated the Muslims. because people are afraid to be labeled as preachers of hate.
Okay.
And this is just some of the comments people have made to me, and even non-Muslims. When I speak to non-Muslim indigenous population, they're afraid. They're saying, look, what is happening in grassroots is actually Muslims being stigmatized, and it's not helping community cohesion.
So as a solicitor, you come across a lot of these views?
I do. I have come across these views from non-Muslims. And it's very important to note this, that it's not just the Muslims who are afraid, who are concerned. The non-Muslims are afraid. So I can give you an example from a councillor in Islington recently, saying that, look, this child in her school, in one of her borough school, was questioned. A Muslim child was questioned for saying eco-terrorism in French. He was basically taken by social services, interviewed and investigated.
That's a Muslim child, yeah?
That's a Muslim child.
Okay.
And this councillor, she's actually trying to lobby the British government with few others in her party. So the
councillor being non-Muslim?
Non-Muslim councillor. Okay,
this
is a non-Muslim
So they are
councillor.
actually raising the...
They are raising this issue. Absolutely. Okay. She said that, I'll just quote what she's saying, just one quote. What she's saying is the proposed motion to work with trade, she's saying that she wants to work with trade unions, universities and faith groups to request the government changes elements of the program that damage community cohesion. Okay, so she's passionate that she wants to do something about this, because she believes that the government has blown this out of proportion and has responded in a has provided a knee-jerk reaction to the whole issue. The Muslims feel that they haven't been consulted properly. There wasn't adequate consultation amongst the Muslim communities, and only a section of the Muslim community may have been consulted. And these are effectively in the payroll of the British government. Without naming the organizations, these are very narrow.
Are they Muslim? These are Muslim views that you're saying.
Yes,
some organizations.
Some organizations who do not represent the wider Muslim community. They are fringe organizations that work for the British government as part of the Prevent.
Okay.
And obviously, that is not a fair, transparent way of making laws in this country. So a lot of people are saying that that this is. The government is using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Okay. If I could just take you to a comment made by only yesterday by Chief Constable of Manchester Police Force, Mr. Ian Hopkins, who said it's not just about counter-extremism, it's all about protest. We are in a very difficult position. We tread a very thin line in terms of making sure people can air views, there can be proper debate, that people can protest peacefully.
That's his quotation.
That's his quotation.
Okay.
For me, he's saying, for me, that's the real challenge. Just making sure that police maintain that line and don't become the thought police, because that's dangerous. So he's concerned that the police are becoming thought police, and he's concerned that the government hasn't striken a fair balance between clamping down on extremism and free speech.
Okay.
Because Britain boasts itself as being a democratic, liberal society where human rights are protected. And one of the articles of human rights is freedom of speech, freedom of belief and freedom of speech. Yeah. And what a lot of the think tanks like these people they're saying, look, this is actually infringing on fundamental human rights and our fundamental values. And obviously the government has gone too far, too fast. Yeah,
but this is not aired so much in the Muslim community. I mean, is it? I mean, there are some organizations that are discussing these issues, but obviously, like the general Muslim community, the public, they're not really aware of this.
To be honest with you, I have been observing the Muslim community over the last 10 years, and the mosques and community centers, and recently, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, Muslims across the board, these are Muslim scholars I'm talking about, preachers, they have been silenced. They are very apprehensive about the future in this country, and then they are not genuinely raising those political dissent, those views that are that are meaningful, constructive criticism of, say, for example, foreign policy, they're afraid to air, they're afraid to raise.
Well, under this act, obviously, it makes it even more difficult.
It does.
I want to try and bring in Abdul Samad. I mean, the obvious question here is, what does the government define as extremism? I mean, that's the obvious question here. I mean,
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. What it is, actually, even to this day, from what I've come across, I mean, there isn't actually a very clear definition of extremism, you know, and I mean, it started off as violence, and then it's about holding particular views, and really the net is so wide, and even non-Muslims are becoming afraid now. They're thinking, hold on a minute, these laws that are coming in, actually they contradict the very values that our nation is built upon, and how can we guarantee that they won't use these laws to really upon even non-Muslims, or other communities, or other just normal people, so there are growing concerns. I mean, like
you've said the net is wide. I mean,
net is very wide.
How do you? I mean, how would someone understand this?
I mean, when you don't have very clear definition and guideline, really, it's interpreted, as seen fit at whatever given time, and this is the issue, really. People are genuinely concerned, not just Muslims, like Brother Quddus has mentioned. There are non-Muslims, politicians, human rights activists, who have protested against some of these draconian laws that are coming into effect.
I think, maybe if we've seen a lot of attacks on Muslims, especially the Muslim woman, because of the attire they wear, the hijab. Do you think, like there's a rise of Islamophobia? Do you think these kind of, deliberately targeting?
Yes. I mean, I think these type of inflammatory sort of like speeches coming from, politicians and some of the media outlets, it is giving rise to, the right-wing fascist, anti-Muslim sort of like thing. And yes, like you said, over the last few weeks at least, we've seen so many different attacks, on Muslims, and very specifically targeted towards Muslims. And these things are not really picked up by the government at all. Yeah. These things are, pretty much ignored by the media as well. Well, so you can see, I mean, like there is an agenda, I feel, that is being played out, and it's to really, link Islam to violence and extremism and things like this, and at the same time to cover up for foreign policy, because I think actually the real issue here is foreign policy, and a lot of people, I mean, like everybody says this.
Let me interrupt you. I mean, the reason I've said that to you is basically, the two incidents, because someone recorded this on their phone and they've uploaded on YouTube. And that's why there was a big, hoo-ha in the media. In terms of if there are many incidents like that, I believe, which goes unreported, and obviously the kind of comments that these, thugs that they've made, obviously that's something that what you're saying, that looks, does it really, because these guys who are attacking or who are making these kind of comments, they're not really they're not political people. They're not, they just. No,
that's right. These people basically, they take everything from the media, from the media, and it's what the climate is created by the media and the politicians, and really otherwise these people are very uneducated about Islam and Muslims and things like that. So. They feel threatened, basically,
so do you think the media is to blame as well?
Of course, the media is also to blame. It's like they create this animosity and a fear which is unreal. It's actually non-existent, but they create this fear, so that non-Muslims, they will react and respond in violent ways against Muslims, and like you said, the rise of Islamophobia is very real. It's very real, So I mean, and I feel that the Muslim community is very, very afraid now. Like you said, the imams, you know, the masajids, you know, our scholars, they're afraid to now speak their mind. Yeah. They're very much afraid to speak their mind, and under this, and in this situation, you find that the Muslim community is they don't really have very, you know, clear guidance in terms of how to react and respond to such situations.
Very good. Kudus, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, what I was going to say is the media, the British media, unfortunately, have always been unfair with the British Muslim community here in terms of there is a clear imbalance in what they portray for the Muslim community. For example, the hijab, they would stigmatize by showing the hijab as a sign of oppression.
But do they really? I mean, I can appreciate there are some far right, maybe, you know, tabloid papers, but generally you do.
Yeah, this is if you look at it across the media, from my experience, I've seen magazines, I've seen on TV, on radio, that this hijab is a symbol of oppression, and how do Muslim women, how on earth Muslim women living in the West are wearing such an attire? You see, and that is really not helping. Yeah, as Brother Samad said, it's actually causing resentment amongst the non-Muslims. Some of them, not all of them. As I've given you a lot of quotes before, that it's not the majority of the non-Muslims. Okay. In fact, Islam is one of the fastest growing religion in Europe. So not everyone who sees what is on the TV who is going to actually believe in, because some of these are unsubstantiated. So extremism equals Muslim. A lot of people, they're not stupid. They know that this is definitely a right-wing campaign to slaughter Muslim and Islam. Inshallah. A lot of people know that.
Inshallah, brothers, to our listeners, please join in. You can contribute by commenting, sending your questions. Unfortunately, our phone lines are down tonight, but you can text us at 07477080248, or you can go on Twitter, which is at Middle Path Radio, or if you have WhatsApp, you can send us WhatsApp on 07477080248. Sorry, I'll repeat that again. 07477080248. So, Brother Kudus, you were saying?
Yeah, what I was saying is basically that not the majority of the non-Muslim population are not against Muslim and Islam. No matter what the media portrays, they understand, because they can see that a faction, a group of their society is actually being targeted. Yeah, and they're intelligent enough to realize this. This is why you have many commentators within the non-Muslim community who air their voices, but their voices are not promoted in the mainstream media.
Okay.
Yeah. And you are talking about Muslims being affected and being targeted by certain individuals who have been.
We're talking about hijab,
race and religious hatred amongst a lot of, for example, in Barnet, the incident in the bus you were referring to. There's many other incidences like that, actually, that the media don't pick up on. So there's been an incident, an 80-year-old man who was going to the masjid in Bradford. Yeah. Can you believe it? He was stabbed by a fascist because all he was doing is going to a masjid to pray. 80-year-old man.
Overtly.
Yeah, he looked Muslim because he had a long beard, white long beard, and they couldn't tolerate that.
But I think, what is visible is like the Muslim woman, obviously because she's wearing hijab, especially if she's wearing the niqab, the veil. There's a perception that, like you said in the media, that there's terrorism, and there's always all those pictures that they've created.
Absolutely,
it all adds up, isn't it?
It does. Under English law, there is a concept in criminal law that you're innocent. The presumption that you're innocent until proven. Unfortunately, in this day and age, with the Muslim, he's guilty until proven innocent, basically.
But this is subjective, though. I mean, let me
because this is exactly what it is. So when somebody sees a female with hijab on, with being covered, they think she may be carrying something inside, maybe in her bag. Yeah.
Okay.
So they've already made a conclusion.
Why do you think that is?
So that person actually is innocent until proven guilty. But with Islam, with Muslims, is reversed. She's guilty until proven innocent. Now she needs to evidence and substantiate her innocence. That I'm even with being covered, I'm now innocent. Yeah?
Okay. Let's look at like some of the events like 9/11, 7/7, and now the rise of ISIS. We saw the Muslim community actually came out very loud and clear, denouncing and rejecting all of these and making it clear that it's not in the name of their faith. But despite that, we find that the community has become the target.
Okay.
Do you see? Okay. So you see. So what Qudus is saying is that it is Muslims are guilty. Even though they may protest against some of these atrocities that happen, and reject, and even then it's not enough. But I think the real issue,
I mean, do Muslims feel that they are guilty, or is that the atmosphere that has been created, or is it really? Because come on, I mean, if you have an issue, you can, as a solicitor, that you can. Go through the system, so you'll go through the law and whatever is required. Do you see?
That's all fine, well and good, but it's the perception.
Give me an example of where like where they can I don't know, imprison you for and without a trial. I mean,
there's many incidents. For example,
in UK.
Yeah, many incidents where.
I mean, I'm not talking about Guantanamo Bay.
No, I'm not talking. I mean, maybe obviously, in terms of Muslim being arrested and unlawfully detained, there's hundreds of those. There's hundreds of, obviously, I can't give you exact statistics, but there's hundreds of those. There was one teacher who, in his school, during school hours, all he said was, Alhamdulillah, boys, come to prayers in the next Friday prayer. And for that, he was subject to disciplinary hearing. How inhumane
Why was
is
that? Because he said...
Because during working hours, he was promoting a religious belief.
Because he said, Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. In contrast to that, you had a teacher, a non-Muslim teacher, making mockery of Islam in a school in Redbridge, where he said... in one of these psychology and theology class, he said, philosophy and theology class, he said, look, inshallah, boys, let's get on with our class. And he's not even a Muslim. And the Muslim students are there, but they can't now account him. It's okay for him to make mockery.
So the non-Muslim teacher, he said inshallah.
Yeah, non-Muslim teacher.
Why did he say inshallah? I mean,
yeah, this is a sarcastic, condescending comment, isn't it?
Okay, so that means...
to arouse some anger amongst the kids. But unfortunately, obviously, kids being kids, they didn't raise it. Obviously, anything they say, you probably take them and take them to the social report them to the social services, and they'll have to go through the de-radicalization program.
I think what we need to get is basically, I think there's a 28 days. Is it correct me?
Yeah, 28
days. They can hold you.
They can they can detain you without charge.
And that's just for under the Terrorism Act.
Under the Terrorism Act. Yeah, absolutely. Under the Terrorism Act 2006, they could detain you without charge for 28 days. It was subsequently, they wanted to increase it to 42 days.
Okay. So how long has that been?
This was basically in 2011, I believe. Okay. Between 2006 to 11.
Okay. So every year it's getting tougher, isn't it? Obviously.
Absolutely. And now with the new Counter-Terrorism and Security Act 2015, which contains a raft of proposal as unsafe as they are unfair.
Okay.
I
believe we've got a text comment here. Let me quickly. Sorry about that. Let me it says, I'll just read this out, and it says, Salams, thank you for discussing such an important issue that many shy away from. My comments and question is that as parents of two boys, I'm very worried about the CTS bill and its implication in schools. I fear for our future. How would our children be able to uphold even very basic of Islam? Recently, my son said, would school call him extreme if they knew he prayed 5 times a day? as a boy was reported for requesting prayer room. I think what she's saying basically, like, there was an incident. There's a boy he requested in some school for a prayer room, and basically I think he was disciplined. And obviously the text is saying, look, you know, she has two boys, and one of them obviously, you know, in schools they have facilities for prayers. Now, if someone, you know, he's finding it very difficult, because what if he is labeled as terrorist or extremist?
Yeah,
because he, you know, under this terrorism law, you know, it's very.
This is just defined. This is just what I mean, isn't it? I mean, like, the net is so wide now. You find, you know, teachers, doctors, you know, people of various professions are now given instruction to really spot, you know, any persons that may appear to be radical and or extremist, or if they show extremist tendencies. Now, what is that? I mean, how you know, a teacher is there, you know, left to interpret that, okay, and really apply that, and these sort of things. I mean, they really go against this democratic free nation that they make a claim to, you know. It goes.
I think the point of Qudus made is basically how this is affecting the Muslim community, even for a
child
to think like this.
Even for a child to fear, like, for requesting basic, you know, Islamic needs, such as a prayer facility, has become a point of concern and a worry for a child. Now, think about it. I mean, these are our children growing up in this society. You know, how would they feel about this society? You know, so.
Qudus, you wanted to come?
Yeah, the children in school are feeling alienated. There's recently a Muslim lawyer was dealing with the case, and part of his one of the comments he made in relation to the Muslim school and even state schools, he said pupils won't engage in conversation anymore. These are children he's referring to.
How young are these children?
So teenagers who are hungry for explanation, for political discussion, go elsewhere. So these are from ranges from maybe 11, 12, 13 to 16-year-old to 18-year-old. So they're concerned, they're frustrated, but in order to vent their frustration through you know, debate, sensible debate, is actually turning into a fear now, because they are afraid of raising their concerns in schools, in debates and discussions. No, so therefore, if you really examine these counterterrorism legislation and strategy, is this actually working, or is it actually backfiring on the government?
That's the question. I mean, let me just quickly on this point. You know, that means these children that are growing up, if they're not able to discuss this openly, to discuss their faith openly or practice their faith openly, can they really trust the British government? Can they?
And isn't this then?
Isn't this that the danger that they will go online and they will be, quote, radicalized by the hate preachers from you know, Saudi Arabia and somewhere in the Middle East?
Yeah, unless you cater for the Muslim community, and the children's and young adults, definitely, no doubt, because there is a few bad apples out there in the world somewhere. Yeah. And if the mainstream are not catering their needs, they may go elsewhere. Absolutely, and that is actually the causes of terrorism, because of government policies. It's not solving the problem; it's actually creating a bigger problem.
So in the masjids, for them to discuss jihad, and these are something that they'll obviously avoid because of the legislation.
I mean, let's look at the
genuine political, you know, foreign policies, for example. Yeah. I haven't seen in the last 6-7 years, for example, in the Muslim community, foreign policy ever being discussed by adults, by scholars, by people who give khutbah. Unfortunately, that doesn't take place anymore, because they're afraid. They are genuinely afraid of the authority and what could happen to them. Absolutely.
I mean, let's look at the government. I mean, is the government engaging in a fair debate itself? I mean, like you said in the beginning of the show, that they've only just consulted some individuals who claim to be of the faith and who are actually on the payroll of the government itself, and then they're passing and pushing these laws and legislations, you know. So really, you know, my question is, I mean, is the government really interested in a sincere, genuine debate in terms of what is the cause of radicalization and so on. You know, and you'll find that it isn't. You know, it doesn't want to engage. And even Westerners, non-Muslims, you know, other organizations have clearly highlighted.
Absolutely.
Clearly highlighted that the real cause of extremism is actually the foreign policy, which never ever gets discussed, you know, by the government at all.
I have another text, and I think that is related, so I will read it out. And it says, there are children, youth who are susceptible to radicalization, as there's many from UK who have traveled to Syria. Even some parents are concerned. So there is a real concern right now. It's saying there's a real concern at this moment. But just going back to this, I just wanted to maybe go into my second question, which is British values. Why are so many British-born boys and girls leaving for ISIL? How come they don't feel at home?
Yeah, well, I mean, from what we've discussed so far, I mean, you can see that these Muslims are being alienated. They are actually, they don't fit into this society. They've been, you know, victims, if you like, of, you know, these legislations, and there's no explanation. They can't talk openly about their faith and so on. So they do feel alienated, and they do feel that they are actually, you know, the West generally is actually fighting a war on Islam. You know, its invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan, and
that's the backdrop, isn't it?
That's right, and this is what we're talking about, foreign policy, and that's where real discussion needs to take place, and the government is just not willing to do this.
So do you think the real discussion should take place in the Muslim community?
It's actually actively trying to stifle any real debate and discussion in order to cover up for its foreign policy. It's just not willing to accept that there are people, Muslims as well as non-Muslims, that actually believe that there is a problem with the foreign policy of Britain and America.
Could you want to come in?
Yeah, I was going to say there's somebody called Mark Sedgman who said he was referring to this counter-extremist strategy, and he's saying to prevent radicalization. He said this is no more than a unsubstantiated theory. This centers on a linear conveyor belt that individuals move from grievance through radicalization to violence. This is baseless and inaccurate. He goes on to say that this is nonsense. The indicators of radicalization remain unclear. So when you say to me that there's a lot of young children and adults leaving, even that I treat that with a pinch of, I take it with a pinch of salt, because some of it is unsubstantiated. It could be few, but the government has blown it out of proportion, using this as a pretext to justify their draconian laws to implement and enforce that in the Muslim community. But so I treat these figures with a pinch of salt.
Okay, but it is concerning, though. You know, like you've been brought up in this country, you've had a good education, and it's not, you know, the people that are going to ISIS or Syria to fight the Islamic cause, you know, they are professionals, they are educated. You see, so, I mean, they do have a concern. Why is it that they're discontent with the government, with the freedom that they have? Why is it that they live in?
Yeah, because this is because of the government strategy in silencing genuine political thought and dissent. But nowadays, people are extremely afraid of raising their concerns about foreign policies in the Muslim world. So these young
you mean
teenagers,
the Muslims are afraid? Because we
Muslim,
do have
absolutely.
like non-Muslims who are raising these issues.
Non-Muslims,
obviously, then you know,
Muslims are more afraid, obviously, because they would be immediately targeted.
So they feel that they will be targeted.
This is why I mean I can't really see a correlation between those who have left because of radicalization, other than foreign policy, in my view. Because anyone who talks about the foreign policy and brings about a constructive alternative narrative to the establishment is perceived to be a terrorist or a radical, so long as he's a Muslim.
I have another text. I already said salams. This is a very important discussion. My question is there any point fighting the anti-terror laws? Should we not just get on with our lives, trying to live our lives as good citizens?
absolutely there is a point. If this country's politicians say this is a free democratic country, it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, you have a right in our society and privileges you enjoy. You definitely should lobby your local government on this particular point. I make it very clear on these anti-terror laws. You should definitely create, create awareness. We work with Muslims, non-Muslim to create public opinion. Lobby your local councillors, lobby your British government, your MPs on this particular matter to seek your rights here, basically.
Do you disagree, Samad?
We can do this. I mean, we can do this, and we have been doing this, or some sections of our community have been doing this. But ultimately, what I understand, this might be very subjective, what I understand is Britain is a very ideological nation, and it has its vested interests in the foreign policy that it pursues. And it's not going to budge from this. It's going, if it means bring about new legislations, it will bring about new legislations. It will make sure that it gets on with what it needs to get on. And so yes, I mean, yes, we do need to raise these issues. I think we need to educate our community and get them to understand the bigger picture.
What if we don't fight these terror laws? What if we bury our head in the sand and
that's very dangerous. I mean, there are different means by which maybe we can challenge some of these things, and I say, I would say our masjids need to become more vocal and politically engaged, and that's what's not been happening. Unfortunately, our community is not.
You're talking about the khutbahs?
Yes, I'm talking about the khutbahs in the masjids, the scholars, the sort of lectures that they hold. They're very careful now. I think we need to keep within the laws, but we need to also make sure that we get the message across and we make our position very, very clear. And if the government isn't willing to debate and discuss, we need to apply this pressure in a way that the government is forced to debate and discuss these issues publicly.
I just wanted to clarify. I don't mean obviously in terms of participation in the system, maybe not. What I'm saying is, as a solicitor and a fellow lawyer in a group where there's about 150 lawyers, we're trying to create.
Are they Muslim?
Most of them are Muslims. There's non-Muslims as well, some of them, and we're trying to basically create public opinion amongst other organizations such as the Law Commission, Law Society, MPs, and others who are stakeholders in this and who do not actually believe in what the government is doing. And there's nothing wrong with creating awareness amongst them to write to your, the legislators, for example, about these concerns. Because I gave you details of police officers who are not happy, constables who are not, the senior, amongst the senior police officials, they're not happy. So there's nothing wrong in talking to them, for example.
I just wanted to come on this point. You said, look, we need to politically be active. There are those Muslims, in the community that they would say, look, these issues are because we're not politically active. We're not, working towards being MPs or, councillors and stuff. And if we were to be in those positions, then we would have a better voice and we will be able to raise these issues. Now, how would you deal with that? How do you understand this?
Well, I think we need to look at the evidences, and what you'll find is that the evidences suggest otherwise. We haven't seen any Muslim. We have Muslim MPs, but have we heard anything from them? On these issues. In fact, we've seen them to toe the government line, quite openly. But and they at the same time they come into our masjids, at the time of elections, and they encourage the Muslim community to support them, and they play the Islam card and the Muslim card. But I don't want to maybe name names, but we found these Muslim MPs who have supported the invasion of Iraq. Who have actually supported, and they're Muslim. They've supported the invasion of Iraq. They've supported the homosexuality bill and all these other things. Which is completely sort of like something that is not accepted by the Muslim community.
They are, someone can easily say, look, they are in the whatever party they are in. The party whip will,
of course,
push them to obviously,
exactly. So then to advocate that, to become politically involved. I think politically engaging is one thing, and becoming politically involved is maybe something else.
Yeah, I think I think we're moving away from our discussion, but I think that's an important point that you've made. Kudus, you want to say something?
Yeah, the society that we live in has an independent judiciary. I'm talking about creating, through case law, it will be challenged. A lot of the anti-draconian laws will be challenged through the cases that goes through the courts, for example. So this is where we can challenge the government. I don't believe in actively becoming an MP would work, because there are 650 MPs, and the fact of the matter is that those few that are there, Muslims, they haven't really done any service to the Muslims. On the contrary, they've done a disservice to the Muslims.
But
so I don't believe in that.
Muslims.
Yeah, absolutely, they're representing they're representing the entire constituency. It's not just the Muslim. I'm more talking about, for example, bringing legal action against the government if there is a prima facie case against the government, for example, on this issue, and challenging through the courts, because there are the judiciary is still independent in this country, and there are liberal judges out there who feel that this is a really government too far too fast on these matters, and they're infringing on civil liberties and an clear attack on human rights and free speech. So organizations like Liberty, for example, are very unhappy with the government's anti-extremist.
Now that you've come on to organizations, I just want to make, are there any reports that non-violent organizations lead to extremism? Because he did mention that in his speech, that look, those who are, non-violent groups, they should start condemning, and he said no more passive tolerance. He said no more passive tolerance. So, how do we understand this? Because obviously there are Muslim organizations. I'll just mention one name, like Cage, which were quite, they were quite, vocal in the media, and they've been really, came down on. Yeah, I mean, how do you understand?
The establishment has been pushing since the time of Tony Blair this whole idea about the conveyor belt theory, where Muslims initially they become engaged in some organization that doesn't talk about violence, doesn't advocate violence, but then they move on. Now, if you actually look at the evidences, there's no real evidence to prove that. So it's just a theory that they try to push, and now and they use it to really bring about legislations and things like this.
Just on recently on Cage, since you've mentioned it, there was a recent High Court case in relation to Cage, bringing the Charities Commission to court because they have taken the charity status and have recommended other stakeholders not to fund such an organization. And what we found is the judge is actually not hearing the case, saying, look, go outside of my courtroom and come to a settlement. So again, he was, in my view, politically motivated, because if they went through the full trial, what would have happened is most likely the judges would have to expose the Charities Commission, and the judges were very clever in saying to the parties, go outside and settle, because they knew there's been systematic flaws in the way the Charities Commission was dealing with
just going back to the point that you've just made.
Yeah, so can you see things can happen?
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is basically, so Cage, this in the media, there was a media storm.
Absolutely.
Where they were discussing Cage. He said this, the representative of Cage, he said that, Amwazi was a beautiful young man and all of that stuff, But when the issue that you've just mentioned, this is not something that we find in the news, maybe on a footnote.
Absolutely,
really.
absolutely.
Yeah? So you're saying that the media, the Muslim community feel that, look, they've been unjust in terms of, they should have highlighted that and said, look,
Definitely. I'm sure that the Muslim community were probably, unfortunately, because of all this nonsense that in the media, were probably not on the side of Cage on this occasion, purely because of the way they feel they've been seized, and the fear. when the judgment took place, I think after the judgment, obviously after the settlement, they've now felt reassured that Cage hasn't done anything wrong. And for the media to actually expose an instrument of the establishment would be definitely goes against the status quo, because Charities Commission is an instrument of the state, and they wouldn't go against it. So even if they were, especially on a Muslim issue, unfortunately, they wouldn't take Muslim wouldn't take precedent over the Charities Commission, unfortunately.
Inshallah. So our listeners, you're listening to Middle Path Radio, straight talk. So please contribute. You can make comments and send your questions through. Unfortunately, tonight our phone is down, so you can text us at 074 77 080 248, or you can follow us in Twitter, which is at Middle Path Radio. And if you want, you can WhatsApp us at, again, 074 77 080 248. I want to come on to a third point which Mr. Cameron made, and he said he wants to tackle social segregation, community not mixing people, can't speak English, institution not teaching British values. How do the Muslim community, take that on?
Well, can I make an initial point on this? I mean, actually, I've listened to a non-Muslim who actually responded to this, and what she said was that the fact of the matter is that you'll find it's the indigenous population that are not willing to engage and mix with, people of other backgrounds. You'll find that if like for example, East London, and if you move out to Redbridge or Barking, you'll find that the white people are actually leaving the area because they just don't want to be amongst the Asian population.
Is that true though?
Of course it is, and I can see this. I actually live in Barking at the moment, and I can see, all the white people are selling their properties, and every buyer is actually a Bangladeshi.
Maybe it's just because it's a property boom there, and they've, it's an opportunity for them to make money and move away to a better place, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, where have we seen that the indigenous population really, engaging? I mean, do we have examples of where, the white indigenous people engaging with,
it could be the Muslims, they're very, what's the word? They're not engaging. It could be that they don't want to, mix in, because we find the Sikh and the Hindus, they quite happily mix in with the.
I mean, one of the things that we must, recognize is that Muslims are not willing to really give up their Islam.
Okay.
But
that's a problem, though, isn't it? According to the British government,
this is a problem according to the government, according to Cameron's government and Tony Blair before him. But and this is what the real struggle is, really, that the government is engaging in. It wants to make sure that the Muslims actually give up their Islam and adopt the Western liberal secular values, and Muslims will never do this.
He talked about madrasas and its role responsibility,
exactly.
And if they are teaching intolerance, he quite openly said, we will shut you down.
Yeah, these
it's like a very
bold statement.
Yeah, very bold statement.
Yeah,
so they can see that
the word
is an
intolerance.
issue here.
I mean, he chooses the word intolerance to actually really highlight the fact that the Muslims are not willing to accept the Western liberal secular values, and really, I think I encourage the Muslim community to really hold on to their Islam.
So this wants to come in.
Yeah, what I was going to say, Brother Samad says the non-Muslims are reluctant to engage with the Muslim community and interact. Partly, I agree with him, because how can you expect them to integrate with the Muslims? There's 2 points I'll make about the integration of non-Muslims with the Muslims. Is when they, day in, day out, when they turn on the TV, they see Muslims being extremists, Muslims are radical, Muslims are fanatic. They're probably afraid not to integrate with thinking that if I maybe go to his house, so he might have a bomb. Do you see? So that when you are alienating a section of the community, and stigmatize that community, how can the others engage? A and B. My second point was Muslims there's nothing wrong in me inviting my neighbor, non-Muslim neighbor, to my house. In fact, we have so much to offer our non-Muslim fellow counterparts in this country.
Citizens.
Citizens, our neighbors, our community members, because we have so much to offer them. But unfortunately, it is very difficult to engage with somebody who are afraid to engage with us. Otherwise, we have a lot to offer us. We shouldn't feel that we need to integrate and compromise on our values. We don't need to compromise our value, and this is where maybe the Sikh community doesn't have a problem, but we do have an issue in compromising our fundamental values. But at the same time, we have something better to offer our non-Muslim counterparts.
So we're coming. We've got about 5 minutes. So
even Cameron, he admitted that there are, problems. It's a breakdown of the social order of this society. And how does he seek to address that? And what you'll find is that actually Islam and Muslims have a lot to offer to this society. In this society, you'll find that old people, dying alone in their last days, when they have children that
to look after them.
Yeah, but they don't look after them. They're abandoned, and then the state takes up these responsibilities. You find all sorts of problems. I mean, drug issues.
Binge drinking, alcoholism. There's 34% of the British female. They are known to commit adultery. 34%. 33% of men amongst the age of 18 to 40 are committing adultery. So that is causing breakup of families. Now, as Muslims, upholding moral values, Islamic values, we have so much to offer them. Binge drinking is an epidemic. On Friday, it's costing the NHS billions of pounds per year to clean up the binge drinking in clubs and nightclubs and the alcohol-related crimes as well. So we have so much to offer them.
So what the Muslim need, what you're saying, what the Muslim needs to do, they need to engage.
We need to engage.
Instead of isolating them.
No, we need to engage in a very positive way. We need to articulate the case for Islam and that we have a better alternative to their so-called free way of living.
So is there something about the mosque, how they can engage?
Yes, I mean, we've seen like East London Mosque, for example. I mean, they have this open day for non-Muslims to come in, and these are very positive things. I think all the masajids need to open up and really bring in non-Muslims from the community and really, give them information on Islam, give them knowledge of Islam, and then maybe they won't be so fearful. And I think that would work sort of like counter to some of the stuff that is coming out from the media and stuff.
Can we round it up? Obviously, I've got like a couple of minutes. We're pushed for time. So can we just overall message, what can we take from this? Obviously, this is a very big topic. And we can't discuss this in one night. Obviously, we want the community to maybe go out and take this message. And so
we shouldn't be ignorant of the legislation. We should definitely engage and understand our responsibilities and role here, and also understand and learn about the anti-terror laws, definitely, and the CTS legislation, for example, is very important because a lot of us, unfortunately, are unaware of our rights and responsibilities, and that will only create basically ignorance about the system and about the laws, because we have children here. We need to know our rights.
So I'm going to stop. I just want to finish off with your comment, if you don't mind. What would be the take-home message?
Okay. I mean, like Brother Kudu said, I think we do need to engage. We need to be aware, and really, I think what would really help is if our massages actually openly started to address some of these issues. Yeah, because a lot of the children, they are confused. They are, they're not sure how to understand the current issues that are affecting the community. They're watching the events in Syria, they're watching the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq and Palestine, what is happening now, and they're very confused. They're not sure, how to explain and understand some of these things. So I think there is a great responsibility upon our imams, in the community, and they really need to address these issues.
Inshallah, Jazakallah khair. It's been a great discussion. Thanks to our panel and our listeners. I hope you can join us next week for another exciting evening here at Straight Talk. It doesn't end here. You can continue this discussion on Twitter at Middle Path Radio. Again, thank you for joining us and listen to us here at Middle Path Radio. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Middle Path Radio, your #1 online Islamic talk station.